Welcome, everyone. My name is Diana White. I am the Director of Programs and Events with the p.g.a. We have a very exciting conversation today with the producers of introducing Selma Blair. Before we get started, I'd love to say a quick thank you to the team at Discovery Plus for making this panel possible for the Producers Guild. And it is my pleasure to pass it off to Jenelle Riley, our moderator. Jenelle is the Deputy Awards and Film Editor at Variety, and she is a 3-time Emmy winner for her work on PBS's Actors on Actors. Janelle, take it away. Thanks.
Thank you so much. Diane always makes me sound a lot more important than I am.
Sounds very important. Sounds very important, yeah.
And I am so pleased at this point to introduce the producers of Introducing Selma Blair. We have Mickey Liddell, p.g.a.
I'm Mickey. Hi.
Hi. Pete Shilaimon, also p.g.a.
Hello. Hi.
And Troy Nankin, p.g.a.
Hello.
Thank you all so much for being here. Congratulations on a beautiful movie. Whenever I have people as accomplished as any of you are, I actually like to go back to the beginning and ask, what was your first job in this industry? Did you start in a mailroom? Were you an extra on a set? I love origin stories. And let's start with Troy.
There's two versions of this. I grew up doing TV commercials and stuff, and worked at a talent agency in Texas, where I grew up in my 20s. But my first job in Los Angeles was at Triad Artists. I was an assistant in the motion picture talent department, and then went to William Morris when William Morris acquired Triad.
Wow, so you were like a child actor?
I wouldn't give myself that much credit. But yes, I certainly grew up in the business and on sets, and so yeah, I've always been around it, yes.
I think that's so fascinating, because they say, learn as many sides of the business as you can. And you probably, work really well with actors because you've been on that side of it.
I can look back now at this age at everything I've done, and I see it all connecting in a way that I wasn't conscious of, or I didn't have a plan for. But certainly to go from the modeling agency to being working William Morris, to being a publicist for 15 years, to now moving into management and producing, everything sort of built on what came before. Absolutely.
That's really cool. Mickey, for you?
For me, different than Troy, I came here, moved to Los Angeles in my late 20s, and didn't, probably knew one person here, but I just didn't know anything about the business at all. And I didn't even know I wanted to produce. I didn't even know what that word meant. And so I had gone to school in Parsons in New York, and people said you should go to LA. So I came to LA, and I think my really first job was, I talked to a manager. His name was a guy named Brian Schwartzstrom, who's now a big agent at UTA, as huge clients. And he was a friend of a friend, and I talked him into sort of starting a business, like going out on his own. And I said I had money. I really didn't have money, so but I just talked him into it. So I don't even know why he did that, but anyway, it was great for me. And we ended up starting a little small management company out of his house. And so he was a manager. I wasn't. Like I said, I'll run the production, but I didn't know what that meant really. So I was head of production, but there was no production or anything going on. So we started that company, and it started just sort of growing, and one person at a time. And then Brian was such a great manager. He signed Edward Norton and Vin Diesel, and eventually got Mark Wahlberg and Nicole Kidman. It became a bigger company. And so through that, I was able to produce my first movie, which with Mark Wahlberg and Bill Paxton and Juliana Margulies. And I just raised the money for it. So that was just kind of my entree into the business. I was like, I feel like if I can get a good package together, I feel like I can raise money. So I wrote this man a letter who I didn't know at all, and just said, hey, I'm making this movie, and here's the people and all that, and ended up sending me the money. And that's kind of, I've been working with him ever since. So, and I didn't know him at all. And so it's just, I don't know if I fell into it, or it was just like, just dumb enough not to know that you couldn't do all that stuff. But it was back before you had emails and all that. And I sent just packages of pictures of Bill Paxton and Mark Wahlberg and Juliana, and just, we added that package together and started. And so that was kind of my first movie, and went from there.
That's fantastic. Say the name of the movie so people can go.
It was called Traveler.
Well, I remember, but I want to
exactly. Yeah, like 96 or something like that. Yeah, exactly. So, but that was a great way to get into independent film, and From then I just made another movie and just sort of kept going. And then eventually that company ended and I started another one and worked in TV for a while with a partner named Greg Berlanti, and then started my own company, about 5 years after that. So
Wow,
kind of my
that's amazing.
story. Yeah.
Pete, what about for you?
Mine's not as glamorous as these two. 12 years ago, Mickey basically said, "You want to produce?" And he kind of shoved me into the Lion's Den in North Carolina, Wilmington. We shot a horror film, and I produced my first film with a push right into a crazy, crazy set. It was pretty amazing. I learned very, very quickly. I had gone to college for theater and came to LA and really opened up a gym and became had a great, cool gym in Beverly Hills. And through that, I made a lot of friends through the industry, Mickey and Troy being one of them, actually. And 12 years ago, I started my first movie called Where the Devil Hides in North Carolina, Wilmington. It was a horror movie. It was pretty cool. And then right after that, I was sent off to Serbia to do a movie called In Secret with Lizzie Olsen and Oscar Isaac and Jessica Lange. And that's how I started in the business 12 years ago. I had no training. It was just like, just throw you in the Lion's Den, you better produce. And that's how it happened.
That's actually pretty glamorous. You started off by saying it wasn't that exciting or glamorous.
It's exciting, but glamour, I don't know.
Not a lot of glamour.
Not a lot of glamour in Serbia.
Places, for sure. Yeah. And by the way, to say that I was doing that wasn't like I was producing 2 or 3 other movies.
Yeah, he was on other sets.
So I just didn't have anybody else, and it was just one of those times where I was like, "You've got to just do this." Like we went to Serbia, and there was a lot of problems, and I think there was another producer on there, but it wasn't working out. So it was more just like you have to be here because I was doing something in, I don't know, somewhere else in Europe. Yeah. So it was crazy.
I worked for free.
Yeah, you did.
Still, even now?
Still.
Well, again, introducing Selma Blair is such a special and intimate and personal, but also universal story. I want to start at the beginning. Where did the idea to document Selma's journey begin? Was it sort of her idea? Did it happen like over time, over conversations? When did you all sort of decide to take the leap?
Well, because I'm Selma's manager, when she first made her, when she announced it on Instagram, certainly, a lot of phone calls started coming in, and it was the last thing in my mind because I was trying to help my friend get through this moment, and she was at a job and was just dealing with the producers on the TV series she was doing and the film she was doing, and sort of just navigating that moment. But there's a scene in the film where she's writing me a note, and prior to that, she had started describing some symptoms that were so and now that I've learned more about MS, I realized there were a lot of symptoms she was sort of describing. I was just blown off. She was never anybody that like sprained an ankle or pulled a muscle or had a headache. It was, I can't smell, or I think I must have done something on my horse. So I was just sort of in the busyness of my day, like probably like she was, just chalking it up to some weird thing that was going on, and this is what it felt like to be alive. But when she wrote me that note that appears in the film on her video, that's when it hit me that I knew something was up. So on some level for me, the story was always a visual one, because that's how in a way, that note writing, when I saw that video was was when I really knew something was up. Certainly a lot of phone calls came in, people that wanted to do something with it. It was really the last thing on our mind. And then when she started to hear from so many people, friends, people that are famous in Hollywood now that have not come out about their disability or their multiple sclerosis, I realized there was a real power in how she was sharing, and that people really felt seen and acknowledged, and there was a real power in that. And that on some level, we live in a time where you tell your story or it's told for you. And I remember a day when, before she had gone on Instagram and said anything, she was, she is sometimes followed by the paparazzi. And, I think she was just aware that she wasn't willing to create some narrative that other people were comfortable with. She was going to tell her truth. And I think that when I saw how people were responding to it, it just over time became clear that there was a powerful story to be told.
Did she need much convincing, or was she pretty much for it right away?
It's interesting. No, she didn't need any convincing. It was just always a conversation, because some people were reaching out to her or reaching out to me, or so it was, as a manager, I talk to my client about the phone calls that were coming in. We did sort of start to think about, it's always a little uncomfortable talking about her own feelings, because that's hers to, hers to express. But I think she was conscious as a mom that she didn't know what was happening and what road this would take. And she became conscious of, I think, documenting both for herself, where there's her shooting something on her iPhone, how she was moving day to day and sort of tracking it, but also I think on some level conscious of wanting to create some record of some sort. So there was never any talking her into anything or convincing, as much as I think it had to come together in a certain way in order for us to be comfortable enough to do it. Hence Mickey and Pete.
Yeah, Mickey and Pete, were you first approached about this, and how did you become involved?
Yeah, for me, obviously I knew Troy and I knew Selma for a long time, and Pete knew Selma separately from us in a different way. You can tell his story, but I heard about what was happening with her MS diagnosis. And so I, of course, felt terrible for Selma and talked to Troy about it. And he said, would you like to just sit down and talk with us? I don't think at the time we really thought about a documentary necessarily, or docuseries. I don't really know that we really even had that discussion that far. We had been doing documentaries. We'd done with Chris Rock and Billy Friedkin, and we did Biggest Little Farm. And so we were really, I was in the mindset of documentaries. We also do a lot of independent films. So, but I was like, I don't know I just couldn't even really think about it. I just really thought like Selma needs help. And so let's go to lunch. So we met at the Chateau. And I know this now, I knew, from the film, but, she likes to be brought in before anybody comes in, because she just does so much better there. And so Troy was smart enough to do that, obviously. So she was sitting down at the Chateau, and I came to see her, and Troy was there, and I took my breath away. She was so ill at the time. It was one of the hardest lunches I've ever had to have in my life with anyone. Just speech, the way she moved her hands, I thought she can't eat her salad. I couldn't believe how sick she was. And I just was like, this is so sad. Selma is just so full of life. I think everybody knows Selma from, anybody who's ever met Selma never forgets Selma. So she is one of the most incredible people I've ever met in my life, from the craziest times to the sweetest, most vulnerable times I've ever seen. She's just like this person that you can't forget. So I was like, I can't believe this has happened to her. You can't believe it. I look at Troy. And so eventually she had to go to the restroom at the Chateau. And so Troy helped her, and I saw her walk, and it was just the whole restaurant stopped, because, she just weaves from side to side. And it was just so hard to see her get to that place. And if you know the Chateau, there's levels and you have to get there. It was devastating. It just was devastating to see. So Troy and I are talking, and for a while she doesn't come back. And so Troy says, I need to go check on her. So he goes to the restroom, and as she's getting up and going there, we see her, she's being brought back to the table by Sharon Stone. And so Sharon has helped her. I don't know if Selma fell down in the bathroom or what happened, but whether she had a seizure or what was happening, but a lot was going on with her at the time. And Sharon saw her there and helped her and brought her back to the table. And then as Sharon sat down, she begins to tell, she's over with all of her agents, and she was like, hey, this is just, one day you're seeing me. I have stuff that I'm dealing with, and so many people out there are dealing with, or so many women especially are dealing with so many issues right now that you don't have any idea about. And if you guys do this, document this, and if someone's willing to go through this, this is really, really powerful. And in that moment, I was like, this is a documentary. I was like, this is a documentary. It felt like really the universe was sort of sitting down saying, this story needs to be told and we need cameras on her and follow her. And we knew the risks were really, really high. And we had no idea what was going to happen. But I think all of us sort of locked arms at the time. I came back and told Pete. And
I was in France working, and I remember Troy sending me after their meeting with Selma. Troy sent me a couple of videos, and I knew Selma from a while ago. One of the sweetest, coolest person I've ever met, and I actually had to sit down and take this in because the videos that I saw, it was horrific. It was because I remember Selma in such a different way, and watching these videos, I think I was in tears, and I called Troy and I said, what do you guys want to do here? And he's like, well, Mickey and I spoke, and I think we should document this and go through the journey with her. And we were in. It was like three of us. We're like, we're going to do this. We are going to give it 100%. Whatever she needs, we're going to be there no matter what. And it was the most beautiful team I think I'd ever worked with, Troy and Mickey. It was really incredible. It was an incredible journey. A sad and incredible journey because it was heartbreaking.
Yeah, because in a way, you're like, these cameras are going to be on, and we all know Selma, and we know how vulnerable and open she's going to be. Like, I think we knew that at the beginning. And so I just think in a weird way, it was like the cameras were there. I felt like almost in case of an emergency in a way that I was like, what if something happens? Because something could have happened so easily, so many times. And I felt at the lunch, I mean, that could have happened, could have gone a whole different way. So it was just some part of us that just said, we just need to be here for her. And that was just a way for us anyway to show up. Troy was obviously there in so many other ways, but it was just kind of just somehow we knew we needed to make this.
I mean, obviously when you're dealing with such sensitive subject matter, how did that sort of inform the production of the documentary? Or did Selma tell you at the start that nothing was off limits? Because that's how it feels watching it.
Well, absolutely. I mean, I had those conversations with Selma. I knew that it was important I was wearing a lot of hats as a human being in her life. Just as a person, as a manager, and then as a producer, and I had to juggle all of those things. And I knew as a producer that what was important was, and I said to her, if we're going to do this, nothing can be off limits, from the past to the present. She didn't have final cut on this film. I didn't have final cut on this film. She agreed to open up in any way because she's the subject of this film. It wasn't it's interesting, I realized that she's well known and there's a lot of celebrity docs made now, but it was really important at the beginning to establish that wasn't this story. This wasn't the story of a famous person. This was the story of a human being. And when Sharon Stone walked Selma out of that bathroom, it wasn't two famous people hanging out. It was a human being coming to the aid of another human being in need. And I think that on some level, especially during this time we're in, it just ended up being the most relevant and timely thing that we all need to hear today. There's no nod to her future. There's no album coming out afterwards. Even as her manager, I was, when we were on set, I didn't go in when they were shooting. We really gave Rachel, the director, space to make her film. So even when I saw them, like, what do you mean you don't know if you're going to act again? I got to experience as a viewer too, because I wasn't in there. Like we created a real space for a film to be made that was not, on one hand, the fact that we are all family and we are all really close. But I don't think that, I think what that did was it created a feeling of safety for Selma, so she would be willing to be the subject of this film. But I had real respect for this art form. I had real respect. I was thinking earlier today, I was thinking about what was my first entry into documentaries. And I remember the first one I ever saw when I was a kid was Harlan County, USA, which I looked up earlier in 1976, which would have made me 11 years old. So I don't know how at 11 years old I had a VHS copy of Harlan County, USA. And so for me, like my interest and entry in even into this business was always from documentaries. And, when I first moved to LA, my favorite day of the year was always Docu Day, that the International Documentary Association does the Saturday before the Oscars. And I'm the guy that'll go sit there from 8 a.m. until midnight. Back to all of them. My favorite, like even now I'll go and go do that. So I was aware of, I think how we needed to set this up for Selma as to be the subject of this. But as a manager and friend, I had to sort of disassociate myself. So when I went on set, I was there to produce.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You mentioned the director, Rachel, is it Fleit?
Yes.
Rachel Fleit. She did such a fantastic job, and I can't believe that this is her feature directorial debut.
Yes.
How did you find her, and how did you know she was the right person for the job?
Troy?
Well, Selma had done a story in Vanity Fair, and Cass Bird, amazing photographer and director, had shot the photos. And Cass has a really there's a really sort of electric energy between Selma and Cass. And I reached out to Cass and for the purpose of saying, like, who's you? Like, who's you as a director? Or like, what are you doing? Have you ever thought of doing this? And I FaceTimed Cass, and she picked up the phone, not knowing where I was going to call, and Rachel was sitting next to her.
Wow.
They happened to be on vacation together. And I asked Cass a question. She said, well, as a matter of fact, and this is my friend Rachel. And that's how we met. And she sent copies of some shorts she had done, one called Gefilte, about gefilte fish. And I remember having a really emotional response to the film. And I thought, wow, if this film was about, in theory, gefilte fish, I wouldn't have expected to feel so much. And, I think, it actually, once Mickey and Pete met her, which I'll let them speak to, there was just a real sense of ease to the whole process. I mean, I think part of what informed the process was the fact that we didn't have the luxury of time. We didn't have the time to contemplate much. It felt very much and was, I think there's an energy and an urgency to it because her disease was progressing. The treatment was going to take place. It was all happening. And so we sort of, and I'm so thankful for that, because I'm the guy that if I need a new couch, I'm going to look at every couch that has been made over the last 100 years and like find the right one, and just the room will stay empty. So there was something about the fact that this was happening and it was unfolding that just sort of made me get quickly to the realization that Rachel was the one.
Yeah, we both met right after, and there's no one else. There was no one else that could do what Rachel did. And I think just the fact that she got so intimate, up close and personal with Selma, and Selma allowed her in, I think the trust factor, the love, it was a beautiful duo. To watch those two in action, it was incredible. And just from a filmmaker's, like I'm usually making film, and with film, everything's like, you've got a schedule, you've got a budget, you've got this, everything is just done in a way where everything's just so planned out. What's so beautiful about documentaries, and I am so in love with making documentaries now, it really makes you vulnerable because nothing is set in stone and things change so quickly, especially when someone's got a battle with MS. And it would change every right, guys? I mean, it would literally change every other day. You'd be like, oh my God, what's happening?
Can Selma shoot today? How does she feel? Like, this is a really bad day. It's a really bad week. This is happening. And
there were days where Selma could not talk.
Yeah.
and we still shot. And it was brutal. It was brutal.
Yeah.
And the
also,
reason, I'm sorry, go on.
I'm sorry, I was just going to jump in on for me, we obviously met other directors, but Rachel immediately we met, and I don't know if you know this, but she has alopecia, and you'll know that if you meet her. And
her story is very powerful.
Yeah, and so that also, I believe, is a autoimmune disease. Also, the alopecia. So right away, the language that she had was so much further than even the three of us had. You know what I mean? Just about autoimmune system and what has happened. And Selma, she knew a lot about it. And just immediately I was taken aback by just watching her and meeting her and saying, like, this is just the right person for Selma to open up to, and is going to make Selma feel comfortable with it. Because really all this, like at the time, I mean, here we are, I don't know if this is 2 years later or whatever, but it was so new for Selma too. I don't think, as you can see in the film, it's not like now she really sounds, she does know everything and she's met everyone and she's been through it. But this was way before. And so, she was out there on her own completely. And I felt like Rachel just right away jumped in and says, I can hold your hand. I can take you through this. I've been through something like this. I know what we're doing. And let me lead this, this journey that we're about to ready to go on. I felt so comfortable right away. So I was like, okay, she's really going to be able to have a language with doctors, with everything that we're going to go through that I can't have, and Troy and Pete and even Selma. So to me, that was like, it felt like a gift from God that just, someone was given to us that had been dealing with an autoimmune system. And so to me, that was right there. I felt like this was it. And of course, when they met, it was hours of two people just falling in love with each other.
It's fantastic.
I think the reason, back to what Pete was talking about before, I think the reason, even on the days that she wasn't, none of it feels good. Let's be clear. It was important to keep the cameras on because it was really important to Selma. It was really important to us. It was really important to people with MS that were reaching out to her. It was important to people in the larger disability and chronic illness communities that the reality of it was shown. There was a wonderful short story I read, an essay in a book called Disability Visibility that Alice Wong edited. And it was about how the reason when Selma went out that night at the Vanity Fair Oscar party, why it was such a big deal, was because there's a tendency, if you have a disability, you don't have role models and you don't have people to look up to or see present in the media, the cane might go out of the picture, or in the wheelchair, you might go in tight, if you're on a dating site or whatever. Like, I've had all these conversations, and the story was about how what is inherently like a radical act it felt like to people to just, she not only kept that cane in the picture, she was proud of it. It was her, it was part of her. So it was really important that we didn't create some picture of MS or disability that made people comfortable. It was important that people learned the reality of it, and to feel that now, continuing to unfold in real time and in real life, just makes me go back to our origin story and how people want to be seen, people want to be listened to. We all have that doctor visit. We all get the phone call. We all get the news. This isn't about, a famous person with MS. This is about another human being trying to find peace and happiness and whatever news they got that day, whatever body they're living in. And so it was, that's why it was important that we kept the cameras on so people could see.
Absolutely. And Pete, you mentioned that, it's different from working in narrative film, and that with a narrative film, what your ending is going to be.
Yeah.
So you have this unpredictable narrative, which it sounds like you actually all embraced. And because this film is so honest and intimate, I think if you're doing your job right as producers, it should look deceptively easy, if that makes sense, which I know isn't the case. What did end up, in addition to everything I've just mentioned, being your biggest challenge on this film for each of you?
For me is it's how do you tell this really beautiful hard story, but also give it a little bit of cinematic filmic, it's for me as a filmmaker, it's also important that you could do documentaries, and with documentaries you get such little amount of money. I mean, it's literally, I called my nephews in for favors. Troy would call people in for favors. We have a makeup person, can they just help us out a little bit? I mean, I had people come in and help us with cameras when Selma was ready to go and we had no cameras, right? We would just call in favors, and it was really beautiful. It did become such a close family. Like the core team of 20 of us or 15 of us, whenever we had time in LA or New York or wherever, we just called in people and they just came. They wanted to support. They wanted to help out. But for me, on the producer side, I wanted to give it a little bit of scope, and I wanted to make it feel a little bit bigger and not be so internal 24/7. So my biggest challenge on this project is how do you make it beautiful and intimate, but go outside and give it scope. So that's what I focused on when we, we do the drone shots and we do the bigger shots. To me, that was really important for the film, just from a cinematic point of view. But overall, I think the hardest part would be just not knowing that day if she was going to be okay. I mean, literally, like days I would call Troy and I'm like, how's Selma? He's like, she's so bad today. She's really not feeling great. But she still shot. She never said no, ever. There was not a single day where we were supposed to shoot that she said, I can't do it today. Honest to God, every single day that we were supposed to shoot, even when she would get good news or bad news and the cameras were on her, she just went with it. She's so class. She's a class act.
I think for me, the biggest challenge is the obvious. I don't know that, what's going to happen to our lead. Like it weighed on you like you can't believe. Like every day when you're shooting something like this and she's getting ready to go through stem cell transplant, it is so invasive. I mean, as you see in the film, like nobody knew whether she was going to live or die or make it through this. And, this is somebody that we really, really care about. And this was a film that was really scary every day there. And there were moments that we would just wait by the phone and to see what would happen. And, as you see in the film, I feel like she really did almost die. Like, I mean, there's moments there that I feel like it could have gone either way. And I feel like she even will, tell the story that it was like, I felt like I had the choice whether to stay or not. And I've heard that from other people who've been that, close to death. And so that part, like, just weighs on you as a filmmaker, as a producer. You just cannot believe that every person, from the person holding the camera to the DPs to everyone like that, is just like, what's going to happen in this next moment, So that's something I've never had on any of my films ever, and whether they be narrative or documentary or whatever. And I've never felt that feeling of like, and it feels so good now, like now that she's made it through and is doing better and all that, it's not only incredible, obviously, for the film and for people to get to see that, but really to see Selma getting better is such a victory for everybody.
Yeah, absolutely.
I wanted to come up with a more clever response to what was challenging, other than finding time to sleep. It was I think juggling all the hats and certainly producing for the first time. I mean, I was really in it with her doctor, with the nurses, you get a blood result back here and that impacts what you're going to shoot the next day. And, running down the street, Best Buy to get a hard drive because we have that one. Like there was, as a friend to her and as a person in her life, I was happy that this was that we were shooting this, because it allowed me to be there. And I think when you hear Selma talk about the filmmaking experience, because a lot of people are like, why'd you let cameras in? She's like, it's so easy, just adapting to your own disability later in life and being chronically ill. It's such an isolating experience. And so I think when we talk about this connection that we all made with the crew, and all of us with Selma, I think it was really, it gave her people to share this experience with that really helped her and didn't allow her to become so isolated. So, you know, I think the challenge was really just, for me, just the juggling of all of it. And Pete and Mickey were wonderfully supportive partners, and to me personally. And, you know, at one point, Pete did call me, and I was thinking about Pete did call me and said, you know, you don't have to be booking the sound guy's flight. Like I hadn't produced before. So he's making sure that it's all taken care. I'm just making sure it's all taken care of. I'm like, but there's only one flight on Delta that gets to Chicago in time, and it's an hour from the airport, and she's meeting with the doctor at this time. So in a way, what was going on with her medically really dictated our shoot schedule. So it wasn't the other way around. So it was really just sort of being sensitive to that, to her as a person, to the more important part of her health, and making sure that was at the forefront of what all of our decision making was. But I was close enough to be able to, I think, help shepherd it and you know. But also, you know, also really looking at Troy, and, you know, he and Selma have the most incredible relationship. They're like brother and sister. They're so tight. But also watching Troy go through this, because I know how hard it was. I would look at him at times and I'd be like, oh my God, he is exhausted, and he's heartbroken. You name it. But I saw Troy go through so many emotions. It was heartbreaking to watch. It really was. And I was working with this guy. Like, we worked together on this, and he was 24/7. It was nonstop. And I would check in with Mickey and just talk to him about like a day that we'd shoot or whatever. And I would say to him, man, Troy is having such a hard time, because it's like, it is like his sister. They're so close. They finish each other's sentences, right? So that was also a little tough at times to watch him go through this. It really was. But honestly, I think that I said to Selma at one point, because she was, although obviously aware that there were cameras there, you know, there's a lot of, in her particular set of symptoms with MS, which is different in everybody, a lot of brain fog. And there were times she said to me, what are we shooting? And I said to her at one point, I said, I feel like we're writing you a love letter, and I hope that you read it.
Wow. And how wonderful that she was able to.
Yeah, I think so strangely, it wasn't as difficult. It was a very emotional experience for all of us, but it wasn't, the filmmaking was difficult. Sharing this experience with somebody was really ultimately life affirming and rewarding, and a profoundly moving experience that I really hope came across in the filmmaking.
Oh, absolutely. And I want to remind everyone, obviously people watching this have seen the film, but please do let everyone know that the movie will be in a limited release starting October 15th,
Yes.
before streaming on Discovery Plus. I really want everyone to check this out. It's such a beautiful, really inspirational, and also very funny film, thanks to Selma. Thank you all so much for being here today. And again, congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having us.
All right. Thank you.